Thank you for joining us on this edition of the show. I chat with a guest who is passionate about e-learning and its importance for the African continent. Look out for that chat on the interview segment. And we have a lot more lined up for you after some news and updates. I am Chukwemeka Agbata. Welcome to Tech Trends.
In the long term, artificial intelligence and automation are going to be taking over so much of what gives humans a feeling of purpose. Getting around in a busy city like Lagos could sometimes be a daunting task. With over 20 million people living in the state, a large percentage of the population rely on public transport for their mobility, and it's not unusual to ask strangers for directions when commuting. It's also not unusual to get misleading directions and miss one's way. This team at Road Peppers saw the problem and they sought to provide a solution to the challenge of transport navigation.
Primarily, one of the things we did see, not just in Lagos, Nigeria, was that there was lack of data to public transit data. So for instance, there's a story I typically tell, and it started off while I was traveling. In 2012, I was on a flight from London to Lagos, and there was this guy who was sitting, but I had to connect to London. There was a guy sitting right next to me on the flight. It was the first time leaving America, going to Europe, and he had asked me if I knew how to get to a specific place there. So, being someone who actually had gone a couple of places as well to Europe, so I took a species for him, and there's something called TFL there. Still a little bit popular now, but the likes of Google Maps now have more predominance in that market space. So I took his laptop and I planned his trip for him. I saw the excitement on his face, was really happy about the whole thing. But then I thought to myself, what if this guy was coming to Nigeria or a similar African nation, or like we see, Oyoluwa? Even within this Lagos, people who stay on the island and the mainland, it feels like a different world when you cross over. So helping people actually finding it easier to actually navigate the cities in terms of how to get from point A to point B without too much hassles and the weariness of having to talk to strangers.
By using an artificial intelligence chatbot named Lara, Lagosians can now get public transport navigation with fare estimates for commercial buses, kekes, cabs, or the lag bus. This way, they can plan, commute, and connect better on their trips.
This is the map of Lagos. For each of these layers, you're seeing actually queries, interactivity happening in different places. So you can see someone asking for questions around the Ikorodu here, towards here. You can see all these whole connections. So it's quite a very busy city of people actually asking directions.
Lara is built specifically for the average Nigerian, helping people get around from point A to B in the most convenient way possible.
So you can open up Lara from your home screen. It says, good morning, Sam. I would like to get to today. I would like to get to channels, TV. I would like to confirm staff on current location. Yes. So it tells me walk to where Ikeja Bridge, allow social upright, Ojudu Bega, take a bus going to Ozopik and then from Opik, find a way down to channels. All right, thank you, and I can read that and tell you thank you and some feedback. Cool, and if I wanted to get another direction, claim a chat. We can try Herbert Macaulay way. No, I want to start from Bega, Ojudu Bega. And the perfect. Yeah. Yeah, so it says from Berger, take plus going to scan straight, get up a Freeman, alternate options. That things that Lara gives as well too. So if I wanted alternate options, I could also get alternate options. Or I could even save it for a later purpose if I didn't want to use I'm on the go and whatnot. So those are things Lara can help out with.
Lara uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the direction layer to provide detailed navigation. And since she's a chatbot, it's just like chatting with a friend or family. But Lara's finesse doesn't mean the team didn't struggle at first to find the best business model.
One of the things we learned along the lines of lessons, sometimes when you're pushing out a new product that's totally novel, it isn't like your bread and stew that people actually used to. There's a lot of onboarding that actually is required for the market. So that also requires that whole initial learning curve rather for users to move along with. So that's one challenge. I mean, there's also the usual challenge like policies and whatnot, infrastructures, funding as well too, because I mean that's one of the things we did have a lot of challenge with. I mean, we're mostly bootstrapped. We did get some initial financing investment during the Facebook Accelerator 2018, but we decided to focus on the path that actually leads to profitability and focusing well on the business just for growth as opposed to raising funds for now.
As the team at Road Peppers continue to improve on Lara's technology, the Informal Directions platform will enable commuters move around with ease and change the transportation experience of many.
Nigeria has for a number of years continued to grapple with the problem of insecurity, and despite government's effort to reduce the incidence of crime in the country, the level is still high. This lingering security challenge is what motivated Olawale Atekoja and his team at Seclot Technology Limited to provide a service that enables individuals seek help when in distress.
And we're basically looking at how we can use technology to solve these problems. Now we've picked on 3 major verticals that has to do with surveillance, tracking, and verification. These are the 3 major roles we're playing as regards security.
The security technology company built an emergency application that sends distress signals to the pre-registered emergency contact of a user. When triggered, the app alerts friends, families, and security agents if and when the user is in danger.
We have a distress notification platform, and what that basically does is this. You trigger it sends your geolocation, your current geolocation, to friends and families that you have added on the app. So when you download the app, you basically put all your ICs, we call them in case of emergencies. When you put them there, they get notified that, okay, you've added them, and whenever you click on that, whenever you're in a distress, it sends your exact location to them, and then they can come to your aid. After you've downloaded it and you have it on your phone, you launch the app by clicking on it. And then you can actually sign up. This is the landing page. It picks your current location, and here you have where you can send a distress. But before you send the distress, you basically need to add your team members, your friends, families, wherever you're going to be sending distress to. And you have it under this compass sign here. And then you can see this icon that looks like people. When you click on it, it loads people. And if you're going to add people, you then come down to this button here, which looks like the plus sign. When you click on it, you add your team members. When you save on it, you then go ahead to add different people. So that it's pretty straightforward. Once you're done adding all of that, There are two forms of distress notification. It's either the app-to-app or the SMS notification. So for the app-to-app, they need to download the app before they can get the notifications. For the SMS, they're going to receive an SMS on their phone that then also gives them the geolocation of where you are. When they click on it, it takes them to whatever map that they have on the phone. So I'll just do a demo here by clicking on, this is the distress button. When I click on it, it says 3, 2, 1, and then it sends the alert. So if you see here, it says SOS sent. And in here, it continues to notify until you cancel.
Olawale and his team are also working on an online solution that will help individuals and organizations verify the addresses of their staff, job applicants, as well as their customers.
The Hong Kong team behind celebrity humanoid robot Sophia is launching a new prototype, Grace, targeted at the healthcare market and designed to interact with the elderly and those isolated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Dressed in a blue nurse's uniform, Grace has Asian features, collar-length brown hair and a thermal camera in her chest to take your temperature and measure your responsiveness. She uses artificial intelligence to diagnose a patient and can speak English, Mandarin and Cantonese.
Hello everybody, I am Sophia. Let me introduce you to my sister Grace. Come over here. Hi Grace.
Thank you, Sophia. Hello everybody. I am Grace. I am built by Hanson Robotics for Awakening Health. I can do all kinds of things for elderly people. I can visit with people and brighten their day with social stimulation, entertain and help guide exercise, but also can do talk therapy, take bio readings and help healthcare providers assess their health and deliver treatments.
Grace's resemblance to a healthcare professional and capacity for social interaction is aimed at relieving the burden of frontline hospital staff overwhelmed during the pandemic, said founder David Hanson.
So we designed Grace to look professional in a healthcare setting. So that would mean so that she would resemble the sort of human-like appearance of healthcare staff. And so then this would facilitate more natural interactions. A human-like appearance facilitates trust and facilitates natural engagement because we're wired for human face-to-face interactions. That's just the way human beings are. And so giving her a face that would be familiar to people, comforting to people, and also language abilities that are comforting. So we now have Mandarin and Cantonese capabilities for the Grace and Sophia robot platforms.
Hanson explains how Grace can simulate the action of more than 48 major facial muscles and has a comforting demeanor designed to look a little like anime characters, often a fusion of Asian and Western styles. Chief Executive of the joint venture between Hanson Robotics and Singularity Studio, David Lake, says Awakening Health intends to mass-produce a better version of Grace by August and Singularity Studio with plans to fully deploy her next year in locations including Hong Kong, mainland China, Japan and Korea.
We're finishing the alpha prototype and you can see now that it's finished at the moment. So we're now very excited because we're going on to the commercialization stage, the next step, which is creating the beta. And the beta is will be done in a couple of months, and we'll be going into the assembly line probably in July or August, where we'll start to be able to mass produce at a small scale the beta, test it, and put it together. So by 2022, we should be ready for full deployment.
Hanson adds that the cost of making the robots, now akin to luxury car pricing, will decrease once the company is manufacturing tens or hundreds of thousands of units.
COVID definitely accelerated the deployment of humanoid robots in different settings. So I think it's also such a socially isolated individuals during COVID with a lot of negative thoughts and the mental states. If they can get help through deployment of these social robots in their intimate settings, I think certainly it has a positive impact in the society. So yes, I think we have been fundamentally and forever changed as a world due to COVID.
Professor Kim Min-soon believes Grace's launch comes as the global impact of the coronavirus has made the need for humanoid robots urgent. Stuck at home during COVID-19 lockdowns, many people have had their mental states affected with negative thoughts. The COVID-19 pandemic made online learning and virtual classrooms become increasingly popular, proving to many educational institutions, parents, and even students how much technology can enhance the learning process. Although EdTech, that is education technology, is nothing new, the concept has fast become a buzzword as various schools and educators latch onto e-learning platforms to help students have a more comprehensive learning process. Despite technological challenges faced, different ideas and digital platforms have popped up to help bridge the education gap and are changing the narrative in the EdTech space. We discuss with Rebecca Strohmeyer, a founder of eLearning Africa, to see how we can leverage e-learning to strengthen our education processes.
All right, Rebecca, glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. Chukwemeka,
Awesome.
is how I pronounce your name, right?
Yeah, Chukwemeka, you got it right. Okay, how important is e-learning in today's world?
Well, I think in today's world, post-pandemic or during the pandemic, e-learning has become extremely important in order to have access to education that you can't do if schools are closed, if universities are closed, if workplaces are closed. So it has become hugely relevant globally, not just for Africa, because people have to continue their education, and then the only way to do it is through some form of remote learning, even if it's TV or radio or other methods.
I know you've been there from the early days of e-learning, and up to the pre and the post and during pandemic and even the post. How are Africans accepting the reality of e-learning?
I think now everybody's, before that people were excited about it, but of course you've got to remember one thing is it's all down to access to the internet. So if you don't have, an infrastructure, and if you don't have access to the internet, and if you don't have access to quality internet, and if you don't have access to affordable internet, then you can think it's all wonderful, but you're going to have a problem. So, so if that's there, and of course underlying all that is access to power. So, but if that's there, I think that it has huge opportunities because not just from the perspective of that you have access to the information that you need. You have access to quality teachers. Teachers can teach in a different way. There are all these interesting and fun tools that also will appeal to young people the way they think, and they've changed because they're far more accustomed to an digital environment, and also just-in-time learning. So from that perspective, there are very many advantages. I would never say that it replaces a great teacher in a great classroom who loves the students, who feels their students, but it has so many advantages. And I just think, let's say from us two people, I'm always doing e-learning just by Googling. I'm, doing something, I'm reading something, I Google something, that's e-learning. I Google it in the time when I need it, and I retain that information because I do it contextually. So I'm not just doing it in advance, I'm in a situation, I quickly need some information, I Google it, I find it, and I retain that information because it's done within that context that I need it. So that's the simplest form of e-learning.
Rebecca, I'd like you to expand a bit on the challenges. What are some of the challenges that you think would affect the adoption of e-learning?
Well, the first ones I mentioned just now is infrastructure. So when the pandemic started last year, we did a survey last year. When the pandemic started, survey with all our Pan-African community, asking them questions about how they can continue education if schools are closed. And many of them received the mandate from government, well, now you have to teach online, but without telling them how, without ensuring there's the access that they need. So the underlying challenge is infrastructure, and it's access to the internet, access to power. Then comes access to devices. And of course, with that also comes enabling the people that are involved, enabling and training the teachers, but not just, and so you could, let's say, train the teachers and empower the teachers that they know what they're doing. But if then the school head or a school administrator doesn't think it's important and doesn't really give them the environment they need, it's not going to work. So it's lots of factors that play a role. But of course, the basic factor is access. If it's it's access to the internet. You don't have that, and of course the cost associated with that. So of course it's it's not. The internet is more expensive in many African countries than it is in Europe. And so these are kind of things that really need to be taken on by government and changed, not only for e-learning, but for e-working. And we've also seen the pandemic has changed the way we work, it's changed the way we do everything. So I think access to affordable, quality access to the internet, access to power are hugely important.
So that brings us to the question of investment. Do you think that adequate investment is going towards this sector?
Not really, no. I think no, it isn't. And when you say the e-learning sector, I mean, in some cases, yes, you've got some great partnerships. So a lot of good initiatives, and there are many good initiatives, are through public-private partnerships. So you might have a partnership with a foundation, together with the government, with a donor country that invests, but it'll be maybe for one situation. It won't be for the whole country. It won't be for all the schools, all the universities in the country. But at the same time, things are happening. Universities are changing. Universities are finding their own means of doing it. They're becoming, they also need to turn out graduates that are relevant for the workplace, that will find jobs. So they're also looking at ways of becoming more competitive, of finding the funds, etc. But of course, I think governments could do more. And one of those things is working with the telecommunications corporations to ensure that it's available.
How do you see the way that Francophone Africa is adopting e-learning in comparison to Anglophone Africa? Is there any major difference that you have seen?
It's slower than Anglophone Africa. It's slow, and I think that's mainly due to partnerships. A lot of universities, and especially where does e-learning start? Schools, yes, but the schools don't necessarily have the funding. Schools is then regulated a lot by the government, and so some schools, private schools, don't have an issue. And semi-private schools, and of course, there's a lot of partnerships, for example, with different foundations and donor countries to support schools. But if people driving e-learning, it's often the university they're driving, and then it trickles down to other areas. And so it's the Anglophone speaking universities that have had more partnerships with countries like the UK, the US, etc. But it's catching up. It's also because France was quite slow to adopt online learning.
Awesome. So my final question will be around, for example, I believe that, the future of Africa is, the number of, young people who are able to educate, but I know that the physical classroom wouldn't be able to achieve that, right? So what do you think is a future of e-learning for education in Africa?
Okay, so as a result, the pandemic brought a lot of bad stuff, but it also brought a lot of good stuff. And what it brought is the fact that we have meetings like this. Everybody's adopted Zoom and thinks it's no problem. So as a result, I've done all these virtual events as well. So normally it's an annual one-year event each year, face-to-face, plus different reports. But now we've done a host of virtual events, a host of webinars, which have allowed people from all over the world to participate. We've done academies. And as a result of that, people have seen that online isn't so bad. So in the past, for example, the perception, I think, of employers, the perception of governments, and not just in Africa, and the perception of parents was that an online degree was not the same as a university degree where the student was present. But now with the shift that everybody's actually had to trial and error, people who actually went to university, in a formal university, had to then switch to online and saw that had advantages. They could have done just as well. Sure, there's certain things missing. You're not out there with young people, but the shift of perception has happened as a result of the pandemic, that online education will be seen as more acceptable. And so there are some initiatives, for example, by some universities abroad. If you want to study abroad, they say, look, the first year you can learn online, and then the second year we'll arrange the visas and you can go, and then you can already have this kind of trial and test to see whether you like the university. Another movement, of course, is also it's not just degrees. So at the end of the day, what is it about? An education, yes, that's a wonderful luxury. I'm going to study something because I want to enjoy that, to stretch my mind. I want to learn something new, and I have the luxury that I can just study this without it meaning that I have to find a job in this area. But that's not a reality for most people. Most people, it's studying to get a degree, to get a job. And then if you look at all the people who actually have degrees, do they actually find the jobs? They often don't find the jobs because the employers don't think that they have the skills that they need in order to fit into that job, or they're not. So there's new movement about short degrees, stackable credentials, and there are various players out there. For example, Coursera, I don't know if you've come across them, but they have open online courses which you can book. I can learn anything on there. I can do a law degree on there, but I can also do a degree on digital marketing, a short course. And so this is going to become more of a reality. But it's a question again is, how do governments perceive it? And how do employers perceive it? If they see that these courses are equally as valuable as actually doing a 4-year degree in university, where I might have done all my papers but not learned the soft skills, then that's a move. Then we'll be moving forward in that direction.
Wow, interesting. Look, I mean, this can be a topic on its own, but for now, this is where we draw the curtain. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you very much. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
My guest has been Rebecca Strohmeyer, founder, eLearning Africa. The reality is that without fully leveraging e-learning, it will be nearly impossible to educate millions of Africans that are in dire needs of such education. This is a call on African governments and the private sector to support the growth of e-learning on the continent. It's a wrap on this edition of the show. Watch the entire show on Channels TV, YouTube, or cfablog.ng. For Tech Trends, I'm Chukwemeka Agbata.